Hey, Walter here. My last guide was pretty much 2 years ago, and what a time it has been. Since you guys voted him as your most hyped potential Novaflare, he will have the first guide. Welt has received some major changes that respect all parts of his kit, so I'm going to go through them properly, talk about the good and the bad, and then I've calculated how much stronger he has become, including his new Eidolons. After that, it's on to the best builds for our upgraded Welt, as well as teams he can be played in. Like and sub if these Novaflare guides help you out, and let's begin. So first up, let's see what changed with Welt, starting with his skill. Not much text was actually altered in this, but modifying 2 extra times to 4 extra times in his bounce creates a large impact. Instead of a 216% base multiplier, we now get a 360% one, or a 1.67 times multiplier increase. This also affects how many targets he could hit. It triggers his strong talent additive multiplier ticks as well, and it finally boosts that E2 that stuck around through the Novaflare. As for his ult, previously maybe one of the saddest abilities in the game because everyone resists it, well, now it got a cheeky bypass. Now instead of just imprisoning, he will also apply weightless for 2 turns, and when allies attack weightless targets they will get delayed, ignoring CC or imprison res. This is major as his whole shtick is now back in some form. Sometimes you might not actually want this delay, but now you can at least use it for pseudo-sustain stuff, or just to help your actual sustain out. You need ally attacks though, which means some teams won't be able to maximize it to be beating the old delay amount, which is kind of annoying. Anyways, weightless isn't just a delay, as his talent also makes it so any enemies in the state will also have their dev reduced by 40%, reminds me of Ashvale. This is a 1.272 times DPS gain for your whole team, scaling with the more def reduction or ignore that you have. We also get an extra small speed reduction to help survivability and uptime. And the talent procs from before are still here. In fact, they also got a 1.67 times increase in multiplier 2, going from 60% to 100%. And remember, we can proc them more times per skill now. So in total, from a skill, without considering his new A4, we went from 396% attack to 860%, over double the power. Speaking of traces, his new A2 changes up that 12% vulnerability to a stacking damage percent buff for allies that attack weightless enemies. This is per ally and stacks up to 10 times for 100% damage total. So you won't get immediate power like before, and some units can take a while to stack this to a meaningful amount, but it's a buff, and with any frequent attacker we get a whole load of amp. Just remember it's damage percent, so not as universal as Vuln. Welt also now gets 30 energy at the start of the battle, allowing for turn 1 ults that can then let him save subsequent ults for future waves, as well as immediately help with survivability and damage amping. The A4 got moved over and nerfed for some sad reason into the A6, so the new A4 now gives him even more attack multipliers with an additional damage hit when using a basic or skill. And so finally the A6 keeps the ult extra energy from the previous A4 but reduced to 5, and this actually kind of tilts me because it ruined a previous rotation and probably a couple others. Anyways, we do at least get a meaningful EHR to attack conversion, getting 20% attack per 10% EHR past 40% up to 80% attack. So at 50% EHR you get 20% attack, 60% EHR you get 40%, etc. Now we can at least build for his base chances and not have to juggle attack percent as much, letting us focus on only 3 to 4 stats rather than 4 to 5. And to help us hit the EHR percent goals easier, he actually had a rare trace bonus change from 28% attack to 28% EHR, though why did the F-res stay? Anyways, that's all the base kit changes done, so onto the Eidolons. E1 was buffed and implemented into his E0 kit, but his new E1 does a similar thing to before, where we get additional damage procs based on his ult's multiplier. Not much changed here. E4 should then be skipped because E4s always suck. Wait, 30% res down for real? Yep, Welt of all characters has one of the best E4s in the entire game, Standard Unit 2. This is a 1.3 times multiplier to all damage for all allies versus all enemies in a vacuum, and gets stronger the more resistances enemies have. Just remember it's subject to the weightless state again, which means ult uptime is even more key. Finally, E6 gives him a 30% CR and 60% crit damage buff on skills and ults versus slow enemies. However, be warned that this doesn't work for his talent, we'll see on live, so unless it's a bug you don't actually build around it, and it's pretty mid. E4 is all you need for main DPS Welt to thrive in reality. So Welt has now become a unit that can delay without a care in the world. Those enemies with CC or Imprison res do not face him anymore thanks to the weightless state. Even without considering his delay, he has a bunch of nice slows stacking up through his kit. He also has much better damage output, still not top tier at E0, but not in the trash either. And his supportive capabilities are more than just a 12% vulnerability, especially if you're an older player and have that E4. He still has problems. He's not going to be SP positive if you want good uptime. He has a new energy issue with the ult energy reduction post Nova, and his amp is all centered around that ult uptime that he has some problems with. He will be used now though, especially at later Eidolons, and it's nice to have him back. Now he is pretty locked behind Eidolons for his true power, notably E2 to be a reliable support, and E4 to be a proper powerhouse, but at least if you get him on the standard banner or unfortunately lose to him in the limited banner, you're now building up to a monster. As always, I've calculated the power increase for the Novaflare, and since he is a 1.0 standard unit, well, let's just say he definitely got a glow up. Taking a team of Welt, Sunday, Sparkle, DHPT, not saying this is his best, it's just a simple generic team, and applying the new multipliers, his new stealth buffs, those new additional hits in his A4, that new attack percent buff he's getting, well, we get a remarkable increase. His damage increased by 2.92 times. The Welt you had before at E0 to new E0 will be doing nearly triple his original damage based on my simulation. The changes are so potent that at Nova E0, he is dealing 1.87 times the damage of his pre-Nova E6 self. Now that doesn't make him tier 0 broken main DPS at Mog's Silverwolf 999, it makes him now playable because before he was incredibly doomed. If you go from such a low start, you kind of have to boost him by this magnitude if you want him to be usable. In terms of damage amplification as a support in a team, he went from legit a 1.12 times damage increase and that's it, to 1.272 times with the def reduction alone, without considering other def reduction or ignore sources. Then if considering a DPS that scales on damage percent with 200 initial damage percent in their kit, then his A2 at max stacks is another 1.33 times amp, or 1.696 times total combined with the def reduction. It does have to ramp up for quite a bit, so it won't be this immediately, and of course it's all subject to weightless being up. When you add that E4 into the playing field versus a neutral enemy, this jumps to 2.2 times amp, which is incredibly large. No more puny 1.12 times boost, huh? And if they don't scale on damage, the res and def reduction alone will be 1.65 times, which is still decent. And so if he can act as your fourth slot as a pseudo-sustained support, you'll have immense power combined with greater survivability than many other supports. I then finally calculated all of his new Eidolon gains for DPS Welt, since we know for support Welt just how much he amps from a second ago, and only E4 changes that. However, E2 is major for him being an actual support, it just won't show appropriately here because again it's DPS Welt. In this carry team, he is ulting easily in time thanks to a double advanced composition, he doesn't need the energy at all. An extra ult is thus not doing anything extraordinary in my DPS sim. But now that that's all done, how do we build Nova Welt? For a DPS Welt, you want to grab the Pioneer set, it is still the strongest damage amping relic set for a debuffing DPS. The only thing that beats this is Quantum set versus Quantum weak, classic. Technically, Wave Strider with 100% uptime can also beat it, but you want to ult at specific times, not on his turn, so it sucks in reality. As for plainness, Pancosmic will be the best if not using an EHR buffing light cone like Jiaoshuo's or his signature, only topped by Banana if using DHPT. Izimo is also great if using a Nihility support. If you have none of these, then Rutilant, Space Sailing Station, and Glamoth all work just fine, just the last two require building speed. For your main stats, it shall be a crit chest, speed boots if running a -1 setup, attack boots otherwise, damage or attack orb depending on your team comp and substats, and then an attack rope. A stack goal will be 2.5k plus attack, base or 135 speed, and then a nice crit ratio. Try to aim as always as high as possible to 100% crit rate in combat, letting your teammates buff up your crit damage. As for EHR, just like Old Welt, he still has the dilemma of building for damage or EHR. Yes, Nova didn't fix it despite the new EHR conversion trace. Getting up to 80% EHR without an EHR cone or chest is a tall task, and the attack conversion is a bonus for building up to land his debuffs, not a cap you must hit. I'd still try hit it if you can though. For Lycones, I did simulations on all possible Lycans, and because of how much damage percent he can now get and including saturation from supports, he actually really likes uncommon multiply Lycones instead, like Jiaoshuo's or the Amphoris Nihility Battle Pass 1. Acheron's Cone can actually perform worse than these in case of high crit damage and damage percent dilution, so a Sunday Sparkle team, but can be slightly better if removing Sunday, for example, and replacing him with a non-advanced generic camper like Tribi, Cypher, Silverwolf. So for DPS Welt, I would rate Jiaocho Lycone with Acrons and Holiday Thermae as his best. His signature, as well as Good Night Sleep Well, Cypher's Cone, Boundless Choreo, and even Incessant Rain are not far behind. And don't go tutorial on DPS Welt, please. If you want to run him as a support, I recommend just foregoing damage, picking up a ton of EHR speed, and focus on energy for ulting as much as possible. I don't think going hybrid is really the play. It is such a pain to balance all the stats and won't end up being that worth compared to just making sure Weightless is up permanently for your true carries. Well, unless he's E6, I guess you could. Anyways, when opting for support, you either run 2p speed combos or you join the Eagle Propaganda for another damn unit. His support planer will be Lushaka for most people for the attack percent buff to the main carry, but if he's supporting multiple crit carries, well, he has the stupid Ephra's trace still in his base kit, so he can build up to kill easily. Or you just run Converging and just get a kill. But Von Wack for optimizing first wave action count is a classic alongside Eagle, letting you ult once on wave 1 and then saving an ult for an immediate opener wave 2 provided you don't want the enemy to act. Then you can ult a second time for 3 actions wave 2. Considering he can now ult first turn, this is pretty easy to do, and this maintains weightless uptime on the important wave and also delays the scarier enemies a ton. You will need E2 Welt to pull off the 2-turn ults though consistently. Main stats will be EHR, speed, HP or defense, energy, and the goal will be at least 160 speed, 167 for the Eagle setups, and then stack HP and defense. You're spending so many subs on speed and EHR that crit and attack aren't going to be well invested, so I wouldn't bother. Any light cone that helps out the team will work, but the Battle Pass Holiday Cone and Sweat work as well as always. If you don't want to spam skills, then Tutorial also works. Let's see why with some energy breakpoints, which also explain the pre-E2 problem a bit more. This is for Support Welt. DPS Welt doesn't need to worry as much as he'll get plenty of kills and possible energy from supporting allies like Sunday, Tingyan, Huohuo. So because of the energy reduction from his ult, even on tutorial with 2 skills, cannot hit a 2-turn ult anymore, needing to get hit or have some other external energy. And this is 2 skills, something not every team can just give to a debuffer. Compare this to Cypher, who can basic spam every turn. For that reason, we probably drop the tutorial cone in most teams. With 3 skills, realistically 2 and a basic, he can use any cone and just has to drop to a 3-turn ult instead. It hurts weightless uptime, but at least you have SP. Now, if you really don't have SP, you can still make a 3-turn rotation, but then you need tutorial this time. But at this point, just use someone else. Now at E2, we get 3 energy ticks per talent proc, and that works for every bounce and twice per enemy hit per ult, just like pre-Novaflare. This means it's very variable on the enemy count for the ult, so I just calculated for a single target so that it's easy. You can do a 2-turn, 2-skill ult rotation guaranteed with only energy rope. This means you could then run any good debuffing Lycone and still have good weightless uptime. This is why E2 is banging. Again, not all teams can let him use 2 SP like that, but at least this time he would be buffing with a cone rather than tutorial at E0. And if you want to be SP neutral to save some SP for the squad, tutorial still has its use by letting you use a basic over a skill and still hitting the 2-turn ult. These energy breakpoints again are variable, and the first one, for example, can be SP neutral if you hit enough enemies with your ult. For example, you hit 4 rather than 1, because every ult enemy hit is another 6 energy. Anyways, let's finish up with some teams. At E2, I can see some people using him as a generic support or pseudo-sustain type thing when their team is cracked and they want more power rather than your average sustain. Good luck in anomaly arbitration though. E4 onwards, you can really slot him in anywhere, but before this Eidolon, he only has def reduction as his universal amplification. Pick your hypercarry that works with what Welt does, pick an advancer or a synergistic second DPS, and then pick Welt. If you're confident you're not going to get one-shot by the stage you're on, then you can pick him as your 4th slot, but again, I would only try this at E2 onwards. So Ashvel Sunday Welt DHPT is a strong and all-male core with 3 express members, and at least Ashvel is one of the few units that can actually attack frequently enough for Welt's damage percent trace to do its job. The 40% def reduction times 2 is real nice, and Sweat or Cypher's Cone on Welt lets you nearly hit or hit the full 100% for that total 2.15 times DPS increase. Silverwolf Yaoguang Sparksy E4 Welt is Welt saying, hey, I want to be with the cool anniversary flagship team too. Zila Sparkle Suridra E2 Welt is you using 3 Novaflare units in one team because you love Kintsugi. I mean, you could run Huohuo for the 4 combo. Acheron, Silverwolf Welt DHPT is a fine Acheron team that requires you pull no limited characters in 2026 outside of Acheron herself, though of course losing to Silverwolf still requires pulling on the limited banner. If you want to run a carry Welt, then him, Sparkle Sunday works great. Sparkle RMC, Sunday Tribby, Sparkle Silverwolf, any basic hypercarry setup works for him. His kit was like an Axa before an Axa, a bunch of attacks and bounces, and pure simple attack percent multipliers all over your screen. Some problematic characters are Finan, as Welt cannot act when this Finan dude shoves him out the way and Welt provides no core flame. And My Day wants to be attacked, delaying enemies would be kinda stupid here. Same goes for other taunt-based or counter-based DPS. Crisis Ez will always be a little weird though, since Cyrene is major for them and Welt cannot help her stack. But let me know what you think of Welt's changes and whether you're going to be using him. I hope this video helped, and if it did, be sure to like and sub to help me out. Thank you so much for watching, as well as to my cool YouTube members, and have a Guoba day.